thorny. We're just going to go right into the next panel here. We'll see who's here and who's virtual. So this morning, Bob Bunting called out state or city planners, state planners, municipal planners. What are we doing about eventualities that we're pretty certain are going to happen, rising sea levels and things like that, rising temperatures? So we're going to have some municipal planners talk to us about that now. So the panel, and if you're here, come on up. I'm not sure who's here and who's virtual, but Whit Reamer is Sustainability Manager for the City of Tampa. Is Whit here or is Whit online?
Whit unfortunately had to drop off due to some timing issues, so he's not going to be able to join our panel today.
Okay. So T.H. Culhane just walked up. We know him. He is Associate Professor of Global Sustainability at the University of South Florida. Sarah Kane, Sustainability Program Supervisor for Sarasota County. And I believe we have as moderator virtually Chris Castro, who's Sustainability Manager for the City of Orlando. Chris, are you there?
I am here. Can you hear me?
Yeah. You ready to go, Chris?
I'm ready when you are.
I'm going to turn this over to you, okay?
Perfect.
We're gonna
Thank you all so much.
Are we going to have you visually on screen?
That would be great if we could.
Okay, we'll work on that. Why don't you start talking while we work to get you on screen?
Perfect. Wonderful. Well, good afternoon, everybody. I wanted to start by expressing my gratitude to Bob and his team for your willingness to make some accommodations that allowed me to engage virtually today. Pleasure to help moderate this panel. Again, my name is Chris Castro. I've had the pleasure of serving as Orlando Mayor Buddy Dyer's Senior Advisor and the Director of Sustainability and Resilience here at the City of Orlando for about 8 years. Some of you might also recognize me from some of the entrepreneurial efforts I've had outside of work, including Ideas for Us, fleet farming, and most recently, the launch of Climate First Bank, Florida's first B Corp certified community bank, working to tackle climate change and advance sustainability across our state and beyond. I'm really excited that we're gathered this afternoon with some of my fellow government and academic leaders here across the state to discuss some of the most important topics of our time. How do we transition to a 100% clean energy future and address one of the greatest challenges we've ever faced, and that is the climate crisis. The last year and a half plus has been extraordinarily challenging for us all. With this global pandemic, with this economic downturn as a result, a reckoning with racial injustice, and the ongoing threat of climate, cities across the country have been under great pressure to get our communities thriving again. During this time, the impacts of climate change have continued to persist, as we've discussed throughout this entire event. And it's all being fueled by the emissions from fossil fuels. According to the most recent IPCC, or the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, the most recent report, limiting global warming to 1.5 degrees C would, quote, require cities to enable rapid and far-reaching transitions in uses of energy, land, urban, and infrastructure, including transport and buildings, as well as industrial systems. So Orlando, you might have heard, has been one of the leading cities over the last decade to step up to this challenge and advance this race to a zero carbon economy. In 2007, Mayor Dyer launched Greenworks Orlando as a comprehensive approach to making Orlando one of the most environmentally friendly, socially equitable, and economically vibrant cities in America, really rooted in that triple bottom line. We've joined virtually every network and commitment you can think of: the Global Covenant of Mayors, passing of a climate emergency declaration and 100% renewable energy policy, and most recently joining this city's Race to Zero pledge, which came about in the days before COP26 and even following. In 2018, though, Orlando was selected as a winner of what's called the American Cities Climate Challenge, an effort with 25 of the largest cities in America. And we've been working together since 2018 to identify high impact actions that all governments should be prioritizing to reduce our emissions, to center communities of color in decision making, and to mitigate the worst impacts of the climate crisis. And a few examples of these policies and programs include things around, first and foremost, reducing building energy use, prioritizing energy efficiency in our homes, in our apartments, in our commercial buildings. This is still the greatest and most cost-effective strategy to reduce emissions at the power plant. Secondly, we need to accelerate renewable energy adoption and decarbonize the electricity mix. Here in Florida, that's challenging with the regulatory environment that we're in, but there are strategies that every city and community can still enable to decarbonize and move towards renewables. Third, we need to reduce vehicle miles traveled. There's no way we can solve this problem with every single person in their own electric vehicle. And so transportation alternative programs, enabling rail, enabling BRT systems, micromobility, and others are absolutely essential to helping us move in this direction. Fourth, we need to electrify everything. As we're trying to enable new buildings, we want to focus on electrification for their heating systems and cooking systems. Here in Florida, that's less of an issue, but in the Northeast and other parts of the country where they have colder climates, this is a challenge, but it's something that we need to focus on. And of course, electrifying our vehicles and buses and transit. And certainly we can't forget about diverting organics from the landfill. Methane emissions from the landfill are one of the greatest contributors to this problem. And I know that a fellow panelist here will dive into that topic even further throughout today's discussion. So with roughly 70% of these global emissions associated with cities and urban settlements around the world, and this rapid urbanization that we're all witnessing, especially in Florida, our conversation today is going to focus on these solutions that our cities and communities are implementing to dramatically reduce these carbon emissions in our own backyards. So joining me today is, as mentioned, we have Sarah Kane, our Sustainability Program Supervisor in Sarasota County, UF IFAS Extension, and Dr. T.H. Culhane, the Director of Climate Change and Sustainability at Patel's College of Global Sustainability at the University of South Florida. Thank you both for joining me today. And we wanted to start out with some individual introductions for a few minutes here. And one of the key questions I'd like for you to maybe respond to is, how is your government or academic institution already scaling up mitigation efforts to minimize the worst expense of climate change? And what are your priority areas that you're looking to advance emission reductions in? So let's start out with Sarah first.
All right, thank you. Thanks, Chris. I do have a couple slides if you want to pull them up. But just to start off with, hi everyone. I recognize some faces and I don't recognize some faces, which is really great. I'm glad that we could all gather here today to talk about this important issue. Our Office of Sustainability in Sarasota County actually started in 2002. So that was pretty, one of the first counties in the state of Florida to do that. So I think there's one more slide first. That's the second slide. Yes, thank you. So I just kind of wanted to talk a little bit about some of our priority areas, which is very similar to what Chris was saying in Orlando. We've had a huge focus on energy efficiency over the years, especially in our county buildings, because as we all know, one of the biggest sources of energy use is transportation and then buildings. So we do have a lot of buildings in the county. So we try to reduce our energy and water use in our buildings. So we've had an energy performance contract to reduce our energy use in our buildings. And basically what that does is it funds energy efficiency and water efficiency projects. And we're able to, the money that we save on those projects in our buildings, we're able to put back in to fund the projects. So with that it was just a couple years ago when that got approved, we're estimated to save about 1.4 million kilowatts in energy and 7.5 million gallons of water. We also have solar PV at 3 of our county buildings, and we have proposals in right now to do even more of that. And can you go back to the first slide, please? Thank you. And we also have a green building resolution. So we try to encourage green building not only in our buildings, but also in the community. We have fast track permitting for green building. All of our new county buildings that are newly developed are all LEED certified. So they're all certified through the U.S. Green Building Council, which is a third-party certification that has all these different points that you get for energy efficiency, indoor air quality, water efficiency, the outdoor environment. There's so many things that go into these third-party certifications that it reduces our greenhouse gas emissions through energy efficiency. and also transportation. So we have 30 electric vehicle charging ports in Sarasota County, and we have electric vehicles in our fleet, and we're hoping to expand on that. Can you go to the next slide, please? We also try to be energy efficient in our community, and that's been a huge focus of ours. We've gotten over $7 million in grant funding since 2010 for energy efficiency projects, and a lot of those have been most of them have been community projects. And in 2016, we realized we needed to start focusing on low-income community members in our community and underserved community members. We were doing all sorts of educational workshops and distributing devices to everyone in our community. And we came across some research, and in Sarasota County, low-income community members are spending 13 to 19% of their income just on their electric bill alone, where median plus income folks are spending 2 to 3%. So we think that's really important. And as you heard today earlier, the energy burden and our heat is going to be huge in our community, and it's going to affect those underserved community members that can't afford to upgrade their homes. They're living in older homes. We've seen some go without air conditioning just because they can't afford to pay their bill. So that's a huge focus of ours. Also, recently we've worked with community foundations. So the Baranzik Foundation, the Gulf Coast Community Foundation, the Community Foundation of Sarasota County, and the Selby Foundation to fund energy efficiency projects for nonprofits in our community. And that has been amazing. And that partnership is really important because it's really fast tracking what we're able to do now with our community members, and especially nonprofits, because nonprofits are having a really hard time with operational costs as well. So these types of projects are allowing us to help them reduce their greenhouse gas emissions by saving energy in their buildings, by also saving money on their utility bills, and they're able to put that money back into their programming that's helping environmental organizations and also human service organizations. And they're working with underserved community members, which is really important. We also have a huge focus on waste reduction. We have a composting program. I'm not going to get into that a lot because I know Dr. Kulhane is going to get into that more, but we want to make sure that we are protecting land and that we have waste reduction, plastic reduction, composting, and all of these other things that are helping us with carbon sequestration. And a huge focus of us, we are the Office of Sustainability, myself and my team, we are under the UF IFAS Extension Office, and so we have a huge focus on education. So we do all sorts of climate change, energy efficiency classes, outreach and events. We just had a big workshop last year, our 16th annual, or last week. It seems like last year, but it was only last week. Our 16th annual Sustainable Communities Workshop, where we brought a lot of people together to talk about climate change and other sustainability issues. We also have a great relationship with the City of Sarasota Sustainability, and we work on these grant projects together. So I just want to recognize Jeff that's in the audience, our sustainability coordinator for the City of Sarasota. It's really important to have these collaborations, not only within Sarasota, but also our region. So we are a part of the Tampa Bay Regional Resiliency Council, Coalition, and the Sarasota Manatee Climate Council, and we just recently completed an internal vulnerability assessment for sea level rise and climate, and we have a proposal several proposals in for additional funding to continue sea level rise vulnerability planning work, and hopefully much more to come. So
Excellent.
that all. turn it back over
That
to you,
was
Chris.
an amazing overview, Sarah. You all are doing such great work in Sarasota County, and the whole region itself. It seems to be bubbling up and mobilizing, and it's great to see regional collaboratives here in Central Florida. East Central Florida, we also have a regional resilience collaborative, and it's been amazing to see almost 40 governments, cities, and counties, often without sustainability coordinators or directors, that are now working together to advance this work. And so love that point about multi-level collaborations, not just in our cities, but with the county, and certainly with our academic institutions, which turns us right over to Dr. T.H. Culhane with USF. Dr. Culhane, please provide an introduction on yourself and let us know what your focus has been in terms of helping the region reduce its emissions.
Thank you very much, Chris, and it's great to work with you again. I was just commenting, my slides apparently are not in the deck, so you'll have to use your imagination as I describe what we're doing. So I'll try to paint a picture with gestural language. But first, I'd like to say that we're not only really grateful to work with you again, Chris, as over the years, but to have a graduate of the Patel College of Global Sustainability at our side. That's the kind of outcome that our education produces. We're really happy with that. And Sarah was a student when my colleague, Dr. Seneshat Sige, who was the climate director before me at PCGS, was the professor there. Now he's ceded the I'm not going to call it the burden of solving climate crisis to me, but he's bequeathed unto me that honor, and now he's at Florida Gulf Coast University, where we work very closely together, because when I came into PCGS, Senesha and I developed the Navigating the Food, Energy, Water Nexus curriculum to go along with the climate curriculum that he had developed and then I have co-developed later. Senesha now with his students at FGCU does the science while we do the life testing with our students and my wife and my baby at the Rosebud Continuum Eco-Science Center, where Clara and Elizabeth visited and have graced us with some wonderful technology to further the agenda of getting off of fossil fuels. The thing that we're doing most to address climate change, and I've been reading The Uninhabitable Earth, Life After Warming, a thriller of reality that is as sobering as Bob's talk earlier, laying it out. We decided at FGCU and at PCGS, a lot of acronyms, that we would tackle what has been considered the third largest greenhouse emitter after the US and China, which is food waste. Now, people dispute the metrics, and we have to sort of unpack what we mean by your consumption residuals are the third largest emitter. But as Chris said, we've got to keep organic material out of landfill, and we've got to make sure that our food residuals that pass through our bodies are not contaminating our waters and leading to eutrophication and red tide with overnutrient loading, that we're not creating a cholera epidemic problem like we had in Haiti. There's a lot of issues that go around what food becomes after we consume parts of it and discard other parts of it. We're all guilty of being this third largest greenhouse gas emitter. So we decided what we would do is eliminate 100%, and I mean 100% of the organic burden by making sure that and I had slides, but I guess we won't have them here. So use your imagination, and Elizabeth and Clara have seen it. We built a dragon, a fire-breathing dragon at the property in Land of Lakes, which is basically a Chinese biodigester poured by the Bishop Construction Company, who owned the land, a family business in Land O'Lakes. Took them 5 days to pour this wonderful structure, which we use as a sculpture. We painted with school kids. We put a dragon's head on top. We made wings. We made a painting of it. Then we did another digester we made look like Snow White's wishing well. And then another one we buried under a bee pollinator garden, showing that you can, on your property, take care of all of the toilet waste, all of the food waste, all of the garden, and produce clean energy that offsets fossil fuel use. So my wife and I, when we got married, we asked on our wedding registry for buckets of food waste. That's what people brought us, moldy bread, tomatoes, things like that. And we cooked for a week on our wedding presents and heated our bath water on it, not using any fossil fuels at all. We also run backup generators. During the hurricane, we were out of power for 3 days, even though we have solar panels, because when the grid went down, we don't have sufficient battery storage yet. But thanks to Elizabeth, we're getting it. We then ran a biogas generator so that our food waste and all those gifts that people were bringing, and our students now bring food waste up, that was generating electricity to get us through that hurricane blackout. We know that not everybody may want to build a dragon in their backyard, even though they're tame and they're safe, how to domesticate your dragon. We're also working with the Home Biogas Company of Israel. And my wife is Palestinian, and we spend a lot of time working with refugees in Jordan and Palestine and Israel, down in the Bedouin villages. Our students come. And the home biogas system is this private sector. It's a commercial biodigester that you can buy for family size, you can buy for a restaurant, you can buy for a school or institution, sets up in an hour and a half and takes all of those organic residuals, considered a septic alternative and a compost alternative, produces liquid fertilizer, which we use to grow tower gardens, aquaponics, hydroponics, aeroponics. So we're having fresh, healthy food grown on the nutrients, and it's maintenance free. No turning the pile, no smells, no possible vermin, if you can ever consider wildlife vermin. I hate that term. So you can imagine that the confidence that you feel when every time there's a gathering like this and we're scraping our plates, we're like, wow, energy and fertigation. I heard somebody use that word earlier today. We're going to fertilize. Somebody's going to go out and pee, I think, by a tree, and so I'm going to go fertigate that tree. But that's the point, is that what we've considered wastes were wasted opportunities, and it's so easy to transform them safely and effectively at the home level. And we've now got policies for our students, because we're not setting government policy, and we'll talk to Chris about that, where our students have to, in order to earn their credit properly, to get that extra credit, they have to provide 100% of their food residuals to either our biodigesters, our compost bins, or, and now this is the great news I want to share with all of you, our research around the world has conclusively shown that if you grind up your food waste in that thing you call a garbage disposal, the Incinerator is the brand that we're working with, but there's many, right? You have that in your sink, many? Raise your hands if you have one. Right, if you grind it up, it turns into fuel and fertilizer in as little as 24 hours to 3 days. Now, if you give it to the municipality, they turn it into renewable natural gas, and they run their operations, and they export it to homes. This is our experience up in New York, working with the Ludlow wastewater treatment plant. So they love your food waste, but then you're giving it away. Now, we Floridians don't like to give our stuff away. That's my SHI you-know-what, and I am not giving it to you for free. You want it? You have to come and wrest it out of my cold, clammy fingers. So what we are saying now is if you have a food grinder, as we do, and you put that in a sink or in an outdoor bucket tub, like a wash tub basin as we have it, you can grind up meat and cheese and dairy and all the things the city tells you can't. And Chris, we got to get this message out. You can put it all in together. I don't care whether you're omnivore, carnivore, you're a vegan, you're a vegetarian. All of it goes together, and it can be simply poured on the ground, and it will attract no flies, no roaches. It will not smell. It will not cause problems, and it will turn into soil in as little as a week, not 3 to 6 months. And that's just by grinding it. Now, we put it in our biodigester because we want the energy, because we want to run generators and run lights and cooking. But if you're just a basic person who says, you know, the HOA is not going to let me do this, just grind it up and give it to the city. If you have a little garden or patio, as we did in Brazil in the favela, where there's no land, we ground it up and poured it in the flower planters. No composting needed. And we've got to get messages out that there are simple solutions to these problems that don't require huge investment, that don't, because the technology is already here. You can get it at Home Depot or Lowe's. That don't require, or home biogas from online ordering arrives in a week and then sets up in an hour. There are so many solutions that are here, but when I ask my students, and I'm sure when you were at Patel too, has anybody heard of a home biogas system that produces fuel and fertilizer? No. And I've been working with them for 13 years. Does anybody know that if you just grind up your food, you can just throw it in the garden or in the flower planter with no problem? No, we're not teaching it. We're not getting to it. So that is where I've parked our program. And as I said, Senator Shaw is doing the scientific research at the ETI lab in Fort Myers. And we're doing the living it every day. And we'd like to invite you to be part of that family of entrepreneurial problem solvers and do it yesterday, not tomorrow.
I'm going to ask a
Excellent. Thank you so much, TH. That was a passionate plea to get us all to divert our food waste from the landfill, that's for sure.
Hey, Chris,
So I wanted to dive now into a couple of pointed questions to
Chris,
each of you.
one sec. I
Oh,
just
yeah,
want to,
sure.
I had a dead mic there, sorry. I want to ask a question that a lot of people must be thinking. Where do you get this online? Where is the DIY guide for how to do this?
Thank you for asking that. So for the commercial entity that is not DIY at all, you buy it and you set it up and it comes with videos and instruction manuals. It's CE listed 9009.
For your house?
For your house, right. The was it ISO 9001, 9004. So you bypass all those regulatory hurdles. That when you go on homebiogas.com, and I'm not a shill for the company, I don't get paid, but I have worked with them for 13 years. And homebiogas.com, and you can buy their any size biodigester and the toilet that goes along with it. So 100% of your wastes can be transformed into value. For the DIY, we have the website solarcitiessolutions.org. And Solar Cities is my NGO that I started in Egypt when I lived with the garbage recycling population, then worked in Germany with trash recyclers, and now brought it to the States. Solar Cities, not Elon Musk's Solar City, although we'd love to work with you, Elon, if you're listening. Solar Cities is our NGO that works in the refugee camps and worked in Haiti and worked in the Dominican Republic. We have guides online that show you how to build your own out of a water barrel, out of an IBC tank.
Right. Okay.
Yep.
Good. People were wondering, I'm sure. Chris, back to you.
Excellent. Thank you. Sarah, I wanted to turn it over to you. In your introduction, you spoke a lot about the importance of equity in your climate strategy, and that's something that certainly resonates with what we're doing in Orlando. Talk to us a little bit more about how local governments and even universities can serve these disadvantaged community members, and what types of programs have or will be developed in Sarasota County.
Great. Yeah, thanks, Chris. It's so important to talk about this because as we're talking about our heat problems, our flooding, everything, our disadvantaged community members, our low-income community members are going to have the greatest effects of this. We're seeing it here in our community, and we really need to work with these communities. And one of the ways that we've been able to is partnering with local foundations. So our Partners for Green Places project that I mentioned, working with nonprofits, but also with the Bransic Foundation, we have a grant partnering with the Sarasota Housing Authority where we're going into low-income housing units and upgrading their homes to be more energy and water efficient. And we're also educating them at the same time. And that's actually allowed us to hire a full-time staff person to help manage that program. So we have to think of creative ideas and strategies like that. And we need to increase our funding, I believe, for our underserved community members because they are already seeing the effects of really high utility bills, the heat, energy burdens that they already have. And I think we can work with universities as well because one of the things one of the reasons why we started working on energy equity is because we saw the research that's coming out for our community, and it's showing how much more of an energy burden our low-income families have. So.
Yep, super important. A couple of things that I think are also important to share to the cities and counties in the room. Orlando has really started focused on training internally. We've hired a chief equity officer earlier this year, and there's a number of government alliances. One's called GARE, the Government Alliance on Race and Equity, who has an incredible training program that really dives into the foundations for equity. What's the difference between equality and equity and justice, and a lot of the terms that get thrown around. And that foundational understanding is critical for us to center equity in our work. Secondly is around mapping our communities. There's a tool out there called GreenLink Equity Maps, or GEM for short. And this tool is now being available for many cities and communities across the country. And it takes your community and it zooms into the census tracts and provides demographic information and overlays that geospatially with other data sets around food insecurity, digital divide and access to connectivity, obviously energy burden, which Sarah has mentioned a number of different times, transportation burden, and other data sets that really help us understand where within our community are we seeing these inequities and these disparities, and how can we now be more intentional about distribution of resources and opportunities to support those residents. So mapping is critical. Financing is a third really important point. Obviously, the lack of resources is holding back families and low-income families of being more resilient, as well as to lowering these burdens. And so there's a nonprofit in Florida called SELF, the Solar and Energy Loan Fund. We've worked very closely with Doug Coward and his team to expand into Orlando. And now I think that they're working statewide, certainly working in the Tampa Bay area. And that's a really creative nonprofit organization that designated as a CDFI, a community development finance institution, and is using very low interest financing to offer up low interest loans to low and moderate income households. So it's a very creative financing tool that you all should consider enabling. And lastly is workforce development, and that's where the universities and the colleges get tied in. Here in Orlando, we're working closely with both UCF and our Valencia College on some accredited training programs around electric vehicle infrastructure, around energy management and controls technologies, and even around solar installations. And so we have to start to think about equipping our community with the skills needed to make this rapid transition that we're striving towards. So very much appreciate your focus on equity, Sarah. TH, I'm going to turn it back over to you now, and let's dive further into this. You started to allude to policies that you feel would be best practices to enable more of this food waste diversion. So can you share more about, in your research in other parts of the country or other cities, what are some best practices that have really helped to drive more of that?
Well, I think we made a lot of great strides. When I was out in California at UCLA, I was part of this solar guerrilla group and this gray water guerrilla group, and we were pushing the envelope because if they didn't expressly forbid us, we were pushing for code creep. So we would, in the Los Angeles Eco Village or up in Sonoma with a foreclosure house that we bought and transformed, we were taking properties in the city and in the countryside, and we were implementing these solutions of renewable energy and home waste management. And then we would challenge people to come and fine us because we always seek variances because we were students, graduate students, we were university, we had the endorsement, but we had this problem that when people would see us doing our home biogas that we did ourselves, or they saw, and you can see on the screen here, the professional company that's taken a lot of that burden off of us. But when we were doing that, or septic alternatives that we'd make, composting toilets that we put in the city in our urban apartments or outside, we realized that most people weren't going to adopt it because they would say either my HOA would forbid me, or, right, there's always that, and they won't let me grow food. And you've dealt with that, Chris, with the fleet farming, right? I mean,
yes,
we should be able to grow food, right? Very much. Thank you for that. And they'd say, look, I don't want to get fined. I don't want to go to jail. I don't want to run afoul of my neighbors. I don't want to have the government show up at night with, and they just think there's going to be people with those night vision goggles tearing your biodigester down. But there's this fear because people don't know. We used to be told our solar panels that we installed ourselves on our apartment roofs were going to cause a fire. And we'd always have a code compliant engineer come and check it. But we found we could do our installs ourselves. It's child play to hook up a solar electric system. It's like hooking up a stereo system. Building a biodigester you can do in a day, right? There's things. So what we need from municipalities is we need you to give it the endorsement and the push so that we practitioners don't feel like maverick renegades, these gorillas in the night, In South Central Los Angeles, we literally put masks on our faces and worked in the inner city neighborhood with gang kids, and our gang activity was making a solar-powered hip-hop studio with composting and biogas. But we realized we were under the law because the police did come in and tell one of our families they couldn't grow chaya in their front yard and nopal cactus and maize. They wanted lawns. And they didn't want us treating our own wastes on property. So I want to throw it back to you. What can you do as somebody working directly with cities to free us from that burden? Because we believe, and a lot of us in Florida think we can lift ourselves up by ourselves if there was constraints removed.
Yeah, in Orlando, this is a very serious topic that we've been trying to make a dent into since 2016. In fact, Orlando was the first city to enable a backyard composter program where every resident within the city, and still to this day, has access to a free 80-gallon Earth Machine composter, and we assemble it and we also deliver it to somebody's home. The idea is that we as a city pay the county to dispose of our waste in the landfill. And if we and we know that about half of your waste by weight is essentially organic material
Right.
in your MSW bin. And so if we're paying per ton by weight to dispose of our stuff in the landfill, and we know that a good percentage of that is organics, we said, all right, let's get creative here, think like a business, and let's offer up a solution at no cost to our residents, encourage them to divert, and that will help minimize the avoided cost of actually disposing that waste into the landfill. So we now have over 8,000 residential composters being used every single day by residents. So that's one. Secondly, is we know that we are a conference and workshop hub for the country. One of the most popular places in the world to come. And so hospitality and entertainment has a lot of food waste throughout.
Yep.
And so in 2017, we launched a commercial food waste collection program. We're still the only city that has a vertically integrated collection system where we're taking that food waste, we're picking it up. We were going to Harvest Power, which was an anaerobic digester
Right.
here, an
Yep.
industrial
At Disney.
facility.
Mm-hmm.
That was ideal. Unfortunately, since COVID, that has gone belly up. And we pivoted and we went to, and now take it to a commercial windrow composting facility to re-earth back into our soils and create compost. And then I think lastly is we're trying to now think about, we've had some startups create some residential composting services in Orlando. There's about 3 or 4 businesses now that are basically taking 5-gallon buckets, and for a small fee every single month, homeowners are able to put all of their food waste in the bucket. That company picks it up, takes it to a composting local facility to turn into soil. They're even giving soil back to the homeowner.
Right.
Unfortunately, that is outlawed. That's illegal in Florida
Outlawed.
because the state defines organic or food waste as municipal solid waste. And so technically, recycling is an open market. Anybody can recycle within our communities. You could be a private hauler or government, but food waste actually can only be hauled by the government and can't be hauled by the private hauler in the residential realm. Commercial is a little bit different. These are all nuances. But long story short, we are now being proactive at creating one of the first franchise agreements to enable the residential organics collection and disposal within our city. And that way we're encouraging not just the backyard composter, but if you actually do want to use a service like O-Town Compost, you're able to do so. And so we're trying to enable more of those. That's an example of a policy that we're currently working on to enable more of that type of diversion from small business.
Chris, can I ask you in response to that, would anybody really come down on us if I said I wanted to suspend my municipal garbage collection? Because my wife and I haven't taken out the garbage in 5 years. We literally, because we clean all of our plastic, every yogurt cup, every ketchup bottle, because we want every gram of nutritious material to go into our biodigesters and into our garden and our tower gardens. We're very precious about it. Then we end up with super clean HDPE, polypropylene, polyethylene terephthalate, all your number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4 plastics, and we're hanging on to them. And now we have a granulator and we're getting a shredder soon, so we're reducing volume, but we're keeping all those precious plastics. We ain't giving them away. So what would happen if we said, and we already turn our aluminum cans, we turn into ingots that we make, we're making chess pieces out of as part of a student project. We make bowls out of bottle caps. Well, since we want to keep it all, what would stop us from leading a movement where people said, what you called garbage is too precious to give to the city. We don't need you. We don't want you. We want to keep it all and work with our schools and our libraries and our communities. So 100% of what we bring home belongs to us, and then we can get value for it.
Yeah, I mean, I wish we had more people like you who are as knowledgeable about zero waste and how to really upcycle and reuse those materials. Part of the challenge is education and people doing it the right way. We have to think about safety of our residents, and waste is a dirty thing and it's hazardous. It can be hazardous if not managed appropriately. And so we have to think about the health and well-being of our residents, and that's one key thing. That doesn't mean that you can't have a home biogas, little system like we see in front of us here in your backyard, or that you can't actually, collect on site and repurpose in your own home garden. We want to encourage that. That's part of why we have free composters. But the other thing we have to start to think about is scale, right? So can we do it more efficiently and cost effectively if we do this at scale? And so there is an entire effort going on now with Orange County and the city of Orlando to think about a sustainable materials management plan, the SMMP. And that whole study that's undergoing right now is looking at our entire waste composition. What are we actually giving to the landfill in terms of percentages? How much is organics? How much is plastics? And then once we know that composition, we're pivoting over to look at what type of infrastructure do we need to officially achieve zero waste to landfill and incinerators by the year 2040. That's the ultimate goal in Orlando, zero waste to landfill or incinerators by 2040. And so part of that study is going to really identify what types of infrastructure we'll need to officially make the move over there. So anyways, a lot more to unpack there, but I'm going to move forward.
Chris, we're actually going to have to wrap up the panel. If you would like to maybe invite a very quick closing thought from each of the panelists.
That'd be great. In fact, the closing thought, if you all can think about, we just got this infrastructure bill passed, and Build Back Better Act was signed by the House last night. Can you, as you close out, share and reflect about how and what the opportunity is to leverage some of these resources and further your climate mitigation efforts?
Yeah, I'll start. I'm very excited about the news, and I guess first I'll mention the American Rescue Plan Act, because our office did put in some proposals to help low-income community members for weatherization and all sorts of energy efficiency projects. So I'm really excited about that, and we should find out in a couple of weeks what those projects kind of look like and what that list is. And then for the infrastructure bill, of course, we're very excited about the possibilities for electric vehicle infrastructure in our community, and we'll definitely be working with our stakeholders in state to see what that looks like. There also might be some weatherization and energy efficiency work within that bill as well. And then, of course, if Build Back Better comes around, we'll be even in a better place for climate funding, which is what we need to really accelerate what we want to do
over
here.
$500 billion in that.
TH, last word. Quickly, please.
We're really excited to work again with you, of course, and to work with private-public partnerships on making it precious, as that last slide that I showed was, that there is no such thing as waste in nature. The cradle-to-cradle circular economy model is what we want to accelerate and put into practice. And so we would love to see a citizen movement working, as Bob has talked about, from the ground up to meet government from the top down. And in the middle there, we should be able to really get the right kind of infrastructure built so that it does scale up and scale out. So that's it. Circular economy is here. We just have to implement it.
Great insights. Thank you, everybody. Great panel.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye, Chris. Thank you.